but cloud will start to break up and sunny spells will develop. Highs of between 15 and 18 Celsius today. BBC Radio Scotland News.
Thank you very much for now, Phil. You're listening to The Sunday Show, and first up this morning we're going to take some time to look at Scotland's problem with drug deaths. New annual figures out this week has put renewed focus on tackling the problem, and despite a small drop of 1,330 people died last year. It does mean Scotland continues to have by far the highest death rate recorded by any country in Europe for drugs deaths. And the Drugs Policy Minister Angela Constance spoke to Radio Scotland's Drive Time programme on the day that the figures were released.
I do not underestimate the scale of the challenge that we face. I mean, we continue, and the figures demonstrate it, we continue to face a significant, heartbreaking loss of life that is utterly unacceptable. And it is beholden on the Scottish Government. It's also beholden on other tiers of government and, of course, services at a local level to, change our approach. We need to be meeting the needs of individuals, not meeting the needs of services or institutions.
Well, the Scottish Conservatives said the figures were off the scale bad. Liz Daly lost her brother Tony Devine in June last year. He was 63 and had been living with addiction for around 40 years. She spoke to Good Morning Scotland.
When I heard that they were releasing the statistics, it's the first time it's actually come home to me that I would know one of those statistics. I mean, they're released every year and I've actually not paid much attention to it, and there'll be other people out there not paying any attention to it because it doesn't affect them. This year it's one of mine.
Well, 65% of the deaths were aged between 35 and 54. More than two-thirds were men. So we're going to focus now on young people this morning. Let's try and understand what work has been done to prevent the next generation dealing with the issues of today. We have been in touch with 18-year-old John, that's not his real name, about his experience growing up around drugs.
You see, my pal's brother, he had an overdose. And they tried to say I deserved it because I was a junkie and that, but I wasn't. He was all smart and kit and everything. Once after getting his methadone, had a cut of arm and died next morning in his sleep. But that boy across the road, his sister no long just died of an overdose. All sorts of folk are dying and I'm like...
Well, that's a window into the life John has been living, and here's what he had to say about what he thinks could help young people.
Shutting probably today, like, the gym's open down here, that's alright. The youth club, that's open back up. Everywhere's got shut down, but theirs is opening back up. I think they should open one up here. I loved it at primary school. Like, even though you just go out for a record about and that, but it was still something to do after school.
And it's often hard to get young people the right support, as John also told us.
It's harder to talk to you guys, I think. You can say to them, no, but whatever, go out and do whatever they want, you know what I mean? Because if I'm not going to listen to my mum, I'm not going to listen to my worker, you know what I mean?
Well, Meg Thomas is Head of Research Policy and Participation at the Youth and Family Support Charity Includem, which works with John. Good morning to you, Meg.
Morning.
First of all, then, what were your thoughts then on the drug deaths figures when they came out the other day, and there was that particular highlight about the number of younger people affected by drug deaths?
I think primarily we need to think differently about how we support young people. And I think it saddens me that often we only think about young people as adults in the future or citizens in the future rather than rights holders now. And I think that means we need to change the conversation rather than about this preventing future deaths, talking about how do we support them now to actually prevent future addictions, let alone future deaths.
So just tell us a bit about your charity then. It works with young people who are involved with drugs and alcohol.
Yeah, we work with a range of young people, those involved with drugs and alcohol, those in conflict with the law. And what we are fundamentally about is working with families, children, young people and their families to build on their strengths rather than focusing on their challenges and building those sustainable changes that happen long after we stop working with them. That's how we transform lives in the long term.
Earlier this week, when on the day the figures were released, there was a protest happened outside the Scottish Parliament. There were lots of different charities and people living with drug issues and families as well there. And there did seem to be a kind of feeling that maybe politicians should be listening a bit more to what charities like yourself, the work that they do on the front lines. Do you think you get heard enough by the people in power who make the decisions and make the policy?
Yeah, Andrew, I think that's a real challenge. And actually, what I would suggest is it's not even about listening to what we're saying, but what we're saying on behalf of young people, what we're saying on behalf of children. You know, at Includem, we are fundamentally about designing services with and for young people, not the services we think they need. And that's what I think the government needs to be listening to, us on behalf of young people rather than necessarily us. You know, children have a right to have a say in the decisions that affect them and all matters that affect them. And as you've heard from John, and actually some of the other things he told us when we were talking yesterday, we're so much about, do you know what, we know what's going on and we know how it will solve it for us, so listen to us. And I think that's who they need to be listening to more.
And you were saying, we heard from John there, I mean, what other kind of stories do you hear from young people?
I think it's the same story, Andrew. It's they want support that focuses on them as a whole person. They don't want to be seen as addicts or offenders. They want to be seen as that whole person, and they don't want services that purely address what is the presenting problem. They want services that do some of those things John talked about there, address their boredom. You know, lots of young people take substances because they're bored. Other young people take substances because actually they're self-medicating against what is a series or significant trauma from their childhood. They want services that actually address that underlying trauma, that allow them to heal, that allow them to find other ways of coping. And that's what they all say, actually. And I hate to always tar all young people with one brush because they are, of course, unique individuals. But the young people want services that respond to them as people, that see them when they want to be seen, not when services want to see. You know, we will go out and see a young person at 9 o'clock on a Friday night if that's when we think they need to be seen, to divert them away from choices that are affecting their safety. Not all services do that, and we need to have that flexibility to respond to what young people need.
And an interesting point you made there, and actually one of the things that this week's figures have highlighted yet again is that drug deaths occur mostly in the most deprived areas of Scotland. So it's also about looking at the circumstances that people are living in, as well as about the issue of drug substance abuse per se.
Absolutely. Challenges, you're right. Poverty plays a huge role in this. And, you know, as I said at the start, you know, looking at children as rights holders now rather than future citizens. If we look at the rights they have under the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, you know, they have a right to play. They have a right to adequate money. They have a right to adequate housing. They have a right to adequate food. They have a right to be supported by the government to resolve trauma. If we looked at young people as rights holders and we made sure we met those fundamental rights, I think we would see a significant change in those statistics moving forward. And it has to address that whole piece. And poverty is a huge thing. And with the cost of living crisis, you know, hitting all of us, you know, there is a danger that this gets worse, not better. And we need to look at that support that's not just rolling out more drug support. It's about rolling out support that supports all of young people's and families and all of their needs.
Okay, many thanks, Meg, for your thoughts from the front lines this morning. Meg Thomas there, who is from the Youth and Family Support Charity Includem. Now,